and welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. In this podcast, we discuss mystical works of literature and how they relate to recovery. We hope you enjoy today's podcast episode.
Hello, this is Buddy C. Welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. Today we have Lori and Brian and Drew and Oscar and Paul. Good to have you guys today. We will be discussing the 49th verse of the Tao Te Ching. First, any announcements, go to buddyc.org. A lot of things there for you. There's resources. Most of the books that we read, if not all of them, are in the bookstore. We have a free daily devotion there if you're interested. Lots of things there. Also, I have a few verses from my interpretation of the Tao Te Ching. And if you email me from the website, I'll be happy to send you a PDF at no charge. And if you know of any institutions we can get the PDF in, we've got it into several. We also make donations of physical books to nonprofits that work within different institutions. So any of those things, if you're affiliated with or know, please email me and let me know about those things. There's a contact there at buddyc.org. Okay. The 49th verse of the Tao Te Ching. Drew, let's start with Stephen Mitchell today, please.
All right. The master has no mind of her own. She works with the mind of the people. She is good to people who are good. She is also good to people who aren't good. This is true goodness. She trusts people who are trustworthy. She also trusts people who aren't trustworthy. This is true trust. The master's mind is like space. People don't understand her. They look to her and wait. She treats them like her own children.
Thank you, Drew. Brian, you have Derek Lynn?
Yeah, I do. The sages have no constant mind. They take the mind of the people as their mind. Those who are good, I am good to them. Those who are not good, I am also good to them. Thus the virtue of goodness. Those who believe, I believe them. Those who do not believe, I also believe them. Thus the virtue of belief. The sages live in the world. They cautiously merge their mind for the world. The people pay attention with their eyes and ears, the people pay attention with their ears and eyes. The sages care for them as children.
Thank you, Brian. And Lori, you have Jonathan Starr, I believe?
Yes. The sage has no fixed heart of his own. Those who look at him see their own hearts. Those who are good, he treats with goodness. Those who are bad, he also treats with goodness, because the nature of his being is good. Those who are truthful, he treats with truth. Those who are not truthful, he also treats with truth, because the nature of his being is truthful. The sage lives in harmony with all below heaven. He sees everything as his own self. He loves everyone as his own child. All people are drawn to him. Every eye and ear is turned toward him.
Thank you, Lori. Lori, would you mind typing the Jonathan Starr into the chat, please? Would you do that for me? Thank you.
Sure.
I know we're going to talk about some of this today. He gives an explanation there on there's one phrase that looks confusing to me. She trusts people who are trustworthy. She also trusts people who aren't trustworthy. That does not sound appropriate to me. So I want to talk about that from what Jonathan Starr said too. Any comments before we begin, guys?
The thing this reminds me of, just the image that popped into my mind when I was reading it. I may have mentioned it in here after it happened, but I was driving through the deep South. I don't remember Alabama, Mississippi, one of those states. And I was behind a motorcycle group of motorcyclists, and one of them had towing a little trailer. And on the trailer, it was stenciled or something. In pretty big letters, it said, "If you treat me with respect, then I'll treat you with respect." And I thought, okay, that's all well and good. Why can't he be the one to start treating people with respect? He's saying that his respect of somebody else is based on how they treat him. Somebody's got to take the first step, and he could be the one to take the first step by treating everybody with respect first, and then gaining the respect from others. So I thought he had it a little backwards. And that's what this reminds me of, being good to people, no matter how they're treating you, and trusting people, whether or not they've been trustworthy in the past. You can live out your virtues, your ethics, your morals without letting external circumstances dictating whether or not you trust someone or not. Having said that, you can't trust everybody. Somebody comes to your door and says, "Hey, I'm with the alarm company. You need to let me in so I can, work on your alarm." I don't think that's what this is talking about. You got to be realistic, but I think it speaks to me more about what default position do you find yourself in, automatically seeing everybody as untrustworthy until they prove to you they are, or seeing people as trustworthy until they give you a reason not to. So that's what I got out of it.
Drew, it was your mention of the guy with the phrase on his trailer. It automatically made you not want to treat him with respect, didn't it? It really did, because he wasn't offering anything to you, so you automatically wanted to do the opposite. Well, I know I have to fight that at times. When I see that, I'm like, why am I going to treat him with respect? Why am I going to do that? I'm not. I have to work to do that. I have to catch myself. But in the past, I'd say, screw him.
And similar phrase I've heard throughout my life: "You have to earn my trust."
Yes.
Well, why are you putting me in that position? Why should I trust you?
Yeah.
If you're not trusting me.
Another word that could be used instead of trustworthy would be talking about put loyalty there, is another word that Chinese word could be translated to out of the Jonathan Starr commentary. Even a person who's not loyal, you're loyal to them. Not that this person's untrustworthy, but I'm going to trust them again and hope they behave differently. No, that's not, I don't think that's what it's talking about. Let's go back and start at the beginning. There's a whole lot in this one. We'll use the Stephen Mitchell and then refer to the Jonathan Starr. The master has no mind of her own. Jonathan Starr would say the sage has no fixed heart. I think it would mean no decision from self. Does not have a motive or conniving, that kind of thing. She works with the mind of the people. And Starr says those who look at him see their own hearts. There's a bit of that oneness there. Was it last week or week before? I said, okay, do I get me a cup of coffee or am I giving myself a cup of coffee? Yes, it's both. Am I kind to you? Yes. At the same time, or am I really being kind to me? Yes. It's that oneness at work. Y'all interrupt me if you have something, please. She is good to people who are good. She is also good to people who aren't good. This is true goodness. That reminds me of approaching situations as good and bad. I used to think that God was involved in my good decisions. I had performed properly and the decision was good. If it was bad, I did something wrong. And both were dependent on me. When I'm realizing now, It's dependent on me in a way, but in a different way. Now it's more of approaching situations as to how I can be helpful in this moment, more so than formulating life to be good or bad. Life is just life. You know, guy in a meeting I used to go to would say, life its own damn self. And that's really it, because, well, rain falls on the just and unjust, right? I think we have a tendency to think, or at least I used to, that when things were going good, that really meant that I was working the program like I should. When things were bad, it was still that same old thinking that there was something wrong. Life just happens. Everyone has good. That is life. Life is not all good or not all bad. Life is just life. And we learn that we get our peace from acceptance of the moment as it is, not from orchestrating things to please us. When we can accept even the worst situations as they are, I have found peace there waiting for me in the acceptance, not in the outcome. Yeah. The nature of his being is good, is how Starr says that. This is true goodness. Starr says the nature of the master's being is goodness, the nature. I was in an A meeting the other day, and somebody was talking about the fourth step. No, it's the fifth step, talking about admitting to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. And the nature of my wrongs was fear. Now, what I'm learning is my true nature is a nature of virtue, the day, T-E, virtue. That's my true nature. And the way I know that is when I start removing my fears, surrendering to my fears, allowing them to be removed. I don't want to go kill people. I want to be nice to people. I don't all of a sudden say, ooh, now I want to do something hateful and angry and mean. It's the opposite. So that must be my nature. She trusts people who are trustworthy. She also trusts people who aren't trustworthy. This is true trust. Starr says those who are truthful, he treats with truth. Those who are not truthful, he also treats with truth, because the nature of his being is truthful. So he doesn't treat people differently who are not, that he cannot trust. He treats them both with truth, those he can trust and those he cannot. I really have a tendency, when I'm dealing with someone who's trying to take advantage of me in some way, I want to take advantage of them. I don't know if I'm the only one that feels that way, but I automatically want to do that. I'll try to dig some way. But I think what he's saying here is I would treat that person the same way as I would treat the person who I thought was treating me fairly. It happens when I buy a car. I think they're always trying to screw me. So I'm trying to change my attitude the next time I buy a car. We'll see if that works. But I always leave angry even if I get what I think I want. Oscar?
Yeah, thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
Nice to be here. Yeah, to me it sounds like it's all about ego deflation. And for me, that's the same with the 12-step program. Yesterday, I had a meeting about step 4, and the ego deflation in action really starts there by writing down your ego, writing down how it works, how it operates, what it likes, what it doesn't like, what it does. And then slowly the real nature reveals the real nature of us. So the real nature appears when the clouds of my ego disappear. And when I reside in this real nature, automatically I see the real nature in everybody. And then it doesn't matter what they do. If they lie to me or they do things or they try to sell me things that I don't want, it doesn't matter, because when I stay in this real nature, stay in it is a kind of wrong words, but for the sake of language, when I stay in this real nature, I see the real nature of everybody. And then automatically I will be good to them and truthful and trustful, whatever they do, because I see them as they are, because I see myself as I am. And then I find peace and I am at home, in harmony. And the 12-step program is not to reach this state as, I'm in this state forever. The 12-step program for me is really a toolbox to keep this alive and keep this growing and keep practicing with it and noticing, being able to notice when I take a wrong turn. So for me, I knew this book a long time before I knew 12 steps, and I understood it because it resonated. But now I read it and I think, oh, thank God I have 12 steps to work with this. And I don't have to pretend a kind of good nature by being good, and then inside all things is turmoil of a mess. So I'm grateful for the 12 steps. Thanks.
Thanks, Oscar. Yeah, when we start seeing our nature, we can start realizing the nature of others. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Paul?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite verses because it reminds me of my Christian upbringing. I see a lot of Christian values in this verse. You mentioned, Buddy, that not everything is good or bad. It just is. And I look at people that way too. I don't think I've ever known anybody who was all good or all bad. Even some people I consider the worst people had some redeeming qualities to them. Just try to remind myself to look for that. Even the car salesman, I'm sure, has some redeeming qualities. But
hey, Paul, that is my problem, not theirs.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to have you today, by the way. Thanks.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's good to be back. I haven't been here in a while, but always good to join these meetings. I always feel better after one of these meetings. Yeah, I'm also reminded of this verse. Also reminds me of my grandma, my mom's mother, who was one of the best people I ever knew. I'm fortunate I got to spend a lot of time with her when I was younger. And one of the things she did, they lived in a small town in Minnesota, and she lived about a block from the railroad tracks that went through town. And a lot of times, I don't know if they still do this, but the guys used to ride the trains. We called them hobos. They used to ride the trains. And a lot of times they would come to my grandma's house looking for a handout. And my grandma never turned them away, no matter how dirty or drunk or whatever. She always at least gave them a sandwich. And I remember this made a big impact on me when I was probably about 5 or 6 the first time I saw her. I saw this guy come to her door and wondering, who is this guy? And I remember asking her, I said, why did you give that dirty bum a sandwich? And she said, he looked like he asked me for help. So I helped him. No judgment, nothing like that. And that really stuck with me. And again, I think back to my Christian upbringing, hearing the stories about Jesus and how he would go to the prostitutes and the criminals, and he would seek out some of those people. And so again, just this verse reminds me of that. And even in recovery, I know how I thought I was a terrible person that was beyond redemption. And when I got into recovery, I found that while some people did judge me, a lot of people didn't. They just took me at face value. And once I was able to turn things around, I was able to see that those people, when I was one of them, I thought I was one of those bad people that didn't deserve to have what I have since I've been in recovery. And so I try to keep that in mind and try not to judge others, especially when they relapse and that kind of thing. Just because, again, I guess the saying is, for the grace of God, there go I. So again, it comes full circle back to the Christian upbringing. Yeah, this verse really resonates with me.
Thank you, Paul. Good to have you, sir. Lori?
The first one and the second one both show up for me. And Paul mentioned the word judgment. And I think for me, freedom, I find freedom in love and tolerance. But love and tolerance for me requires no judgment. And I love that's how he puts that. So those who are good, he treats with goodness. And those who are bad, he also treats with goodness. My mind is not then allowed, or it doesn't have to be engaged in deciding and categorizing and analyzing. I just respond with goodness, no matter what the other person's throwing down. And that by itself provides so much freedom, because then you can focus on your nature as it is, as opposed to reacting, engaging, defending, being right, looking good. It gives you the opportunity to. So I think that goes back to the first stanza or whatever. Has no fixed heart of his own. It's just the nature, right? And it's dependent on the moment, because what's goodness in one moment may not be in the next. So as long as you're paying attention in this moment, and constantly, for me, it's a constant practice, set aside. And that was when I was studying the traditions. The woman who was going through the traditions with me the first time taught me the set aside prayer. I hadn't learned it in my regular meetings. And that has been a cornerstone for me. I set aside everything I think I know, everything I believe to be true. And that just creates so much space to be present, and then freedom to just express your nature, which when you get rid of all that defensiveness, expectation, and judgment, tends to be good. For me anyway. Beautiful. I love it. Thank you guys. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Lori. Okay, so let's talk about our nature for a minute. How is it that we come to a point that we begin to see this compassionate, virtuous nature? How is that? We know it's not from self-will, because I've always tried to, quote, be good, treat people with kindness, all those things that I was taught growing up, but I never really could do that on a regular basis. Just speaking from my experience, the times that happens, it seems that I notice it after the fact, or someone else notices that I'm behaving differently. It's not that, oh, I'm going to act from my new nature today. It's none of that. It's not the decision I make and then work hard to do. I think it's becoming that human being rather than the human doing. All that other's doing for me, the judgment, all the other, the working hard, doing better. I only realize this when I surrender and allow fear to be removed from my life. And it's removed by first me taking these actions of compassion, even when I don't believe they will work. When I pray for the person I resent, for example, me realizing all the changes in me. Oscar?
For me, it's a real important change for this was that I recognized that I had to bring the darkness to the light instead of the light to the darkness. I am not able to bring light to the darkness. So the darkness is my ego, my anger, my jealousy, my thoughts, my judgments, all this egoistic thing, this whole person I thought I was. And then in the step 4, I start seeing it and bringing it to the light. So with this, I saw that it was not me. but the light is me. And by bringing this darkness to the light, I can let it go by seeing all of it in the light, and then letting it go. That's how I operate in this steps 4, 5, 6, 7. First, bring it to the light, then tell it to anybody, tell it to another person, tell it to God, tell it to myself, and then 6 and 7, letting it go. And so slowly, step by step, on daily basis, with small things and big things, it's the same process. But it's always, there is no me who can carry the light to the darkness. I have to look the darkness in the eye. So I have to look at my fear. I have to look at my anger. I have to look at my jealousy. I have to look at my all these things, all these troubles, worries, distrust. Thanks.
Thank you, Oscar. So what I hear you saying is that the fourth step made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, combined with admitting to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character and humbly ask Him to remove our shortcomings. That's how you bring the darkness to the light. Yes. Thank you. Anyone else? I'll be back in just a second. I'm going to get my daily reflections. Oscar, that reminds me of my favorite daily reflections. Actually, I have a bookmark there. I only have one that I really like this much. It's May 9th, Walking Through Fear. If we still cling to something we will not let go, we ask God to help us be willing. If I have problems with the God word, I can reinterpret that for me as saying, if I cling to a fear that I will not let go of, or some resentment I will not let go of, or an anger, or any of those things, I ask love to help me. And the way love helps me is by me choosing to love. Situations will come into my life where I have the opportunity to choose compassionate living over succumbing to my fear. I'll read the text for this daily reflection. Here I had taken my fifth step. When I had taken my fifth step, I became aware that all my defects of character stemmed from my need to feel secure and loved. To use my will alone to work on them would have been trying obsessively to solve the problem. In the sixth step, I intensified the action I had taken in the first three steps, meditating on the step by saying it over and over, going to meetings, following my sponsor's suggestions, reading and searching within myself. During the first 3 years of sobriety, I had a fear of entering an elevator alone. One day, I decided I must walk through this fear. I asked for God's help, entered the elevator, and there in the corner was a lady crying. She said that since her husband had died, she was deathly afraid of elevators. I forgot my fear and comforted her. This spiritual experience helped me to see how willingness was the key to working the rest of the 12 steps to recovery. God helps those who help themselves. Willingness is the key, not belief, not reading the big book through every month, not all those other things. It's willingness. And when she was willing, an opportunity presented itself for her to choose. Am I going to act by my real nature, or am I going to still allow fear to run my life? And this is not, this is a real situation that happened in this, I think it's in this lady's life, where she entered the elevator. She said, I must walk through this fear. And an actual lady was in the corner scared of elevators. So she went over and comforted her. She didn't keep her mind on herself and her fear. she went over and helped her, and in helping her, she forgot about her fear. And I wish they would have left that last sentence off. God helps those who help themselves for me, can be so misinterpreted. I take that as meaning, oh, I do everything I can and then God will help me with what I can't do. That's helping me. No, helping me in this situation is walking through my fear and knowing that the help I give in my self-will and trying so hard is not the real help that I give. How I help myself is by surrendering and deciding to walk through this fear. And in return, we're given an opportunity to help us through that fear. So that's a different, I've written below that, instead of God helps those who help themselves, God sent her someone to help. God did not take the fear away. You ask for God to remove the fear. It's like, okay, you pray to have patience. Guess what happens? You get a line to stand in. Yeah. I never go to Walmart and pray for patience the same day. I never do that. I don't pray for patience anymore, by the way, but that's just an example, because what happens, I get opportunities. Lori?
So this other translation I have, buddy, you're going to laugh, man. Check this out. This is what it says. So this is that one I've done before. Ralph Allen Dale. Yeah, wise people are not absorbed in their own needs. They take the needs of all people as their own. They are good to the good, but they're also good to those who are still absorbed in their own needs.
It's good.
Why? Because goodness is in the very nature of the great integrity. Wise people trust those who trust, but they also trust those who do not trust. I like the word trust too, being introduced. Why? Because trusting is in the very nature of the great integrity. That better than goodness. Wise people merge with all others rather than stand apart judgmentally. In this way, all begin to open their ears and hearts, more prepared to return to the innocence of childhood.
Thank you, Lori.
Spot on. Thank you.
Let's go to that last phrase. The master's mind is like space. People don't understand her. They look to her and wait. She treats them like her own children. Jonathan Starr says the sage lives in harmony with all below heaven. He sees everything as his own self. It's what we're talking about, right? He loves everyone as his own children. All people are drawn to him. Every eye and ear is turned toward him. He sees everyone as his own self. Guess what? In return, others see him as their self. He loves everyone as his own children. Guess what starts happening? He starts being loved by others as their children. Which is it? Did everyone start loving him because he treated them as their own children, or the opposite of that? Yes, is the answer. It's both. Why are people drawn to him? I think it has to do with what's said at the first stanza, that the sage has no fixed heart. The sage is not motivated by self. The sage is motivated by that nature that we're starting to allow in our life, that being. We're moving from the human doing to a human being. And we find out our job is more similar to what we learn in meditation. We learn to observe. We learn to allow. We learn that we don't have to push in life. In meditation, I don't have to drive thoughts off. I allow them, and if I don't let them carry me off, if I just give them presence, my experience has been they'll just dissipate. Same thing with our walk, I believe, is that when situations come up in life, just like thoughts, we don't get carried away by those things in judgment and anger and resentment. We realize that the actions that someone else is taking is nothing to be taken personally. It's nothing that what they're doing to us. If we react, we begin to do that to ourselves because that's what we're doing. If I react to the anger, guess what? That anger is here. Oscar?
Last concept too, and it reminds me of when I came, the first times I came to meetings, and I was really broken and insane, completely insane. But I recognized some people, and they were really long time clean and really quite, and I definitely was drawn to them because I got more quiet only by sitting next to them and listening to them. And I couldn't explain what it was. I didn't understand what it was, but I really loved that. And now I can see, these are the guys with 15 years of ego deflation
Yes.
experience, and it was so nice. And when I saw, okay, these are, they have what I want. Really, that sentence. I really thought that. I thought, really, okay, that's what I want. So I'm going to ask one of them to be my sponsor. And so the working of the program is so nice. And I won't say they are sages or holy men, because they are not, of course, but I see this in them. I see this, how it works, because they see everything as their own self, loves everyone as his own child. All people are drawn to him. That's what happened. Every eye and ear is turned towards them. That's what happened. Really nice. Thanks.
Thank you, Oscar. I think we all have moments of being the sage. Even, I think Paul that mentioned, even the worst person has some good qualities. When we're allowing those good qualities to manifest, that's that surrendered nature we're talking about, that love nature. And I think we all have moments that we allow that to manifest in our life, allow that to show itself. And I think the growth is allowing that in more moments of the day. That's the growth. Back to what I say every time almost. Feel like a broken record. How can I be helpful in this moment? It really is not any more complicated than that. That's it. And then how can I be helpful in the next moment? That's all. It's not these huge things. Now we may find out as time goes on, there's been huge things that have happened, but our attitude was the same the whole time. How can I be helpful right now? Because I can't be helpful in the future. That always brings me to the moment. Always. That's what the sage is doing. When the sage works for the mind of the people, can only do that in the moment. The way she's treating people, only can do that in the moment. All the way down, that can only be done in the moment. Being that human being instead of the human doing, right? Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Paul, I hope you have some more favorites and join us again soon.
Yeah, this is Saturday mornings are probably the best time for me, so I'll try to make more.
Good. We enjoy you, Paul. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Oh, and it wouldn't be a meeting that I was at if I didn't mention the gratitude practice.
Yes.
I know Brian's been waiting for me
right?
Brian's been waiting for me to mention that. No, the gratitude, and that really plays into all this mindset too. That I still do that morning gratitude every day, and it really puts me, no matter what I'm going through the rest of the day, I can reset every morning with that gratitude practice. And so it works for me, and I'm sure it works for others too.
So exactly what is your daily gratitude practice, Paul, for those who have not heard it?
I belong to a recovery website I've been at since I first got sober. And we have a daily gratitude, a morning gratitude section. And so that's where I go to post my gratitude. But I also, that's secondary even to just reading others' gratitude. But in other words, everybody posts there and we all feed off each other as far as that goes. Yeah, I get more of a kick reading than posting, but
Are
I
you
post
comfortable sharing the site?
Yeah, it's called soberrecovery.com.
Okay.
It's it's a free site, and it's one of the bigger recovery sites. In fact, when I got sober, I'll be coming up on 15 years next month. That was one of the only online resources at that time. So I've just stuck with it. And I'm a creature of habits. Once I get my hooks into something, you can't get rid of me.
So you do a new gratitude every day that you post? Is that actual practice? Okay.
Yeah, it has a bunch of different, the website has a bunch of different, it's basically a bunch of message boards.
Right.
But it's very interactive, and there's a whole gratitude section. There's a morning gratitude and evening gratitude. And
good.
I just happen to be on the morning one. So I've posted there pretty much every day for the last 15 years.
Wow. That gets you to the moment, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's just become, I don't even think about it. It's just automatic.
Yeah.
So
good. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate you. Any other comments before we close? You guys have a great week. Hope to see you next week. Thank you. Hello, this is Buddy C. I wanted to make you aware of several recovery-related resources that I've posted in the episode description. These resources include a list of recovery podcasts, a free sober meditation app, daily recovery email, shared Google recovery calendars. Hope you put some of these resources to use and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends in recovery.